Welcome back, everyone. Hope you're doing well. So a little bit of out of season for a steelheading video, but I recently had a friend out of province get into fly fishing last summer, and now he's really interested in getting into steelheading, and I'm getting lots of questions from him about two-handed fly rods. So I thought this might be a good opportunity to do a quick video on just the very, very basics of a two-handed fly rod and how to what you need, what the gear is made up of. I'll give the disclaimer that this is just how I set up my spey rod for the way I swing flies for steelhead, and there are 100 different ways that you can do this. It depends if you're fly fishing with sink tips with a big wet intruder style flies. Maybe you're swinging flies with a big long dry leader and a wet fly on the end, just subsurface. Maybe you're skating dry flies on the surface. Whatever you're doing, that's fine, and those are all great ways to fish for steelhead. But I just, for what we do when we go up north, or at least me, I just want to go through my setup and the bare minimum, the basics of what I use in my rig to fly fish for steelhead on a daily basis. And hopefully this will be useful to some people that are new to two-handed fly rods. And really just, maybe it's a little bit overwhelming going on the internet and seeing all these videos of, maybe advanced tips for spey casting and skagit casting and two-handed fly rods. But I'm going to try to keep this real simple just for you guys who are just curious what it is. And if you want to buy a setup, what you can kind of expect, keep your eye open for, and what you'll need. So first thing is your spey rod, your two-handed fly rod. This is going to be tough for me not to say spey. But really the basic level, this is a two-handed fly rod. You can call it a spey rod, you can call it a skagit rod. There's different terms for different reasons, but the very basic level, this is a two-handed fly rod. So it's just like your single-handed fly rod, except it's longer, it's got a longer handle, and you're casting it way different, right? You're really doing large two-handed roll casts fundamentally. So just breaking this down, obviously have your reel. This is a 4-piece rod. They come in 3 pieces and a variety of different shapes and sizes. This is it's got a number on it, right? And all your rods are going to say this, and it's 8126. They're not all going to say 8126, but they're going to have a number, and that sort of denotes the length and the weight of the rod. So this is the 8's for 8 weight, and the 126 is for 12 foot 6 inches. And the MF at the end is for medium fast. So that helps you identify the type of rod that you're holding in your hands and how long it is. And that'll start to dictate what sort of lines you get for the rod as well. So I don't want to go there yet, but this is the rod. This is your reel. Within the reel, you have, it's embarrassing how dirty my reel is. I should have cleaned it. But you have backing, you have running line, you have shooting head. I have a sink tip, and then I have my leader. So backing, you want to go, try and speed this up for the video. All right, so similar to a single-handed fly rod, you're going to have backing on the reel. So you can YouTube backing knots and how to tie that backing onto your reel. You want to make sure it goes on nice and evenly, just so it's nice and level. So when you're fighting a fish, it comes off your spool level, and when you're reeling it in, you want to try and bring it in level. But anyways, there's your backing. I run like 30-pound backing. There's a variety of options you can do here. So with my two-handed fly rod setups, I do a lot of loop-to-loop connections, not a lot of knots. I find loop-to-loop is strong, doesn't interfere with my casting, doesn't interfere with fighting fish, doesn't get hung up on the eyelets, and it just works for me. So what I've done here is I've made this long loop at the end, and what I've used is a triple surgeon's knot. Works totally fine, really easy to tie. You can also do things like the Bimini twist, perfection loop, but I really like just a triple surgeon's knot. And then on the end, it goes from backing to, this is what's called your running line. So it's a very thin, light line. This is where it's different from single hand fly fishing, where for the most part, you're going to have one whole line that attaches to your fly line, right? And that line is then going to be like level and then taper out into the different types of tapered lines that you can buy. So what you're doing with two-handed fly rods here is you're attaching all the components of the line together, sort of almost in like a custom way, so that it fits you and your casting style and your rod, its flex, its weight, and all that stuff. So I'll do at the end of this slick shooter. This happens to be Rio, the brand, and the product is Slick Shooter, but lots of other brands are making this stuff now. You also don't have to use this like mono slick shooter. You can use it's more like a single hand fly line. It's a bit thicker, but again, that's heavier. It's got more drag, so that's going to resist your casting at farther distances. So that's why Slick Shooter is super thin and slick to the touch, because you want to be able your cast to pull as much running line out to go as far as you can when you're casting. So I'll go triple surgeons, not big loop. And the reason I do this is because I can take my reel off. Try to show you guys all this. So you can take your reel off, and because I made this loop so big, I can then change this slick shooter without taking any of my running or my backing off, right? So you just push these two loops together. Hopefully here. Come on. All right, well, for sake of time, trust me, it does come off. But because it's loop to loop, you could push that loop through, bring it around the reel, and it will release these two loops, right? And vice versa, you can take the loop, put it through the slick shooter loop, back over the reel, pull it tight, and you end up with this, right? So let's put this back together. We'll move on to the next part of this rig. All right, sorry. So there we go. We got all that running line. The running line is the longest part of this whole setup. And then that's going to run. Same thing, loop-to-loop connection. So I'll do another perfection loop at the end. And then this is what's called your shooting head. So this technology is changing all the time. I have what's called a compact Skagit on here. I think it's like 27 feet long, and it's a 600 grain shooting head, and that matches, in my opinion, perfectly with my 12-6 8-weight two-handed fly rod. So these come from the store or from the manufacturer with welded loops, so you don't have to worry about that. So you take your running line, do another perfection loop, and same thing, you loop it all over, pull it through, and there's no knots, right? Loop to loop connection. So this then runs, and there's different tapers to these shooting heads. So again, it depends on how you're going to fish, like what flies, what type of leaders, how deep you want to fish, how big the flies are that you want to throw out there and turn over. So I don't think that's a topic for this video, because it can get pretty technical, and it's really specific to the individual and how you want to do it. But I'm just showing you what I do, and this is how I swing flies everywhere I steelhead, unless, you know, I decide to go dry fly fishing or something like that. So in the end, get to the end of the shooting head. So this is the part, this shooting head is floating. So there are ones that are intermediate sink, and again, that's a little bit more complicated. You don't need to worry about that. But for the most part, you're gonna get a floating shooting head. And then again, loop to loop connections, right? So this is a sink tip, and I usually run them 10 to 12 feet. So when you're casting your fly line across the surface of the water, all this is gonna float on top for the most part. But this sinking portion, this black portion, has a heavy core, and it's going to sink down into the water, and that's what's going to drag your fly deeper into the water column to get in front of the steelhead's face, right? And these come in all sorts of weights and lengths, so you can have super heavy ones that go down real fast, and maybe that's good for fast water, cutting the current and getting deep. But if you're doing that on a nice juicy steelhead run, like a big tail out, you're probably going to get snagged because it's too much weight. If you feel like the fish are pretty bitey and coming up higher in the water column, you can go with a really light sink tip, or you can run no sink tip at all and skate flies across the surface, right? But what I use for the most part is T8. That's just my middle of the road T8. T3 if it's a bit shallow or slow, but T8, if I had one sink tip for the rest of my life, it'd be 10 feet of T8. It just works for everything, everywhere I fish. So then that runs down to another loop at the end, which I've created on this one. And then you put on a leader. And And again, this is can get technical depending on your preference and how you like to run leaders. You can taper them down from like heavy to medium to light, so it's a nice taper and turns over better. You can buy pre-made leaders, but what I do, it's quick and dirty. I run about 4 feet of Maxima Ultra Green, and for steelhead, I always run 15-pound test. Now I know you don't need that. 10, 12 probably get the job done most of the times, but when you're up north on some of these rivers that have big steelhead, big bucks, or on these coastal rivers that have big, mean chrome winter run fish coming in, I feel real good about 15-pound tests, and I don't like running lighter than that unless I'm, skating dry flies on a river that has smaller steelhead, and maybe just casting a smaller, presenting a dry fly smaller, and you just want a bit more of a lightweight tapered leader. You can go down that road. But for swinging steelhead intruder flies with sink tips, I go with 15-pound Maxima, and I don't taper it or anything. I do a loop at one end and non-slip loop knot to the fly, and that's it, man. I've done this for years, and it's not too heavy. It certainly doesn't spook fish, and if it does, I have no idea, because whenever I catch one, it's on this. So I use that. If I'm going for something bigger like Chinooks, I'll go up to 20 plus, depending. Actually all the Chinooks I've caught on 20, and they've never broke me off. They've spooled me and I've lost them, but never broke off. So can't really go wrong with 15-pound. You can go lighter, but I figure I don't think it spooks them when you're swinging flies subsurface. So that's just my opinion. So that Maxima is essentially the same as normal monofilament fishing line for those who don't fly fish, and just what you would spool more or less onto your fly, your spinning rod. You then want to pick a fly, right? So all these flies I'm about to show you are actually, they're all wet flies. They're all designed to be swung with sink tips, subsurface, pretty deep as you can get it, in my opinion. Something that's like a go-to for me, and I think I did a video on that. It's just a super simple egg sucking leech with some blue flash and a pink bead head. Super dirty, I know. That catches fish everywhere. If, say, I want to go a bit smaller of presentation, the water's clear, or I just want to go back through a run, show them something different, something like that. It's a little Squamish poacher tube fly. I'm not going to get into tube flies right now, but another option. If you're swinging big flies or big Chinook, or say you're steelheading in really heavy, dirty water and you really want a big fly that has a big silhouette that cuts through that dirty, silty water so steelhead can see it, something huge like that, big black and blue and chartreuse intruder fly, they'll do the trick. So I'm not saying any one of these flies is what you need to use. It depends on the situation and what you enjoy doing and how you enjoy fishing for steelhead with a two-handed rod. So there's that. And then at the end of these flies, these are all, except for the tube fly, the rest of these have like trailer hooks, right? So instead of a traditional fly that just has a shank with a hook, all part of the same hook, and you tie the fly on that and the hook rides maybe like around the middle of the fly, these intruder style flies are designed to have hooks out the back. And because again, it's a loop connection, you slide this through the eyelet of the hook. I'll show you. And the great thing about this is if you have like, say, a classic fly that just the hook and the shank are the same hook, if you dull that up, you either have to file that hook on that point back to a sharpness that you're comfortable with, or if you run two flies or flies with trailer hooks, you take this little octopus hook. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see this, but it goes through the eyelet. Again, it's loop to loop connections, right? And then that goes over the hook. Pull that tight, and that's your hook at the end of your fly, right? So that's great because if a steelhead's coming up behind and just nipping at it, that gives you an opportunity to catch that fish if he doesn't totally crush it. Some people will argue that like trailer hooks, they don't like them because the fish will grab it too aggressively from behind and get caught deep in the throat. But I'll be honest, all the years I've been doing this, I don't think I've really ever done that. Like, I mean, if you're letting them take it correctly, I mean, it seems to always be in the corner of the mouth or the roof, or yeah, I don't know. I can't really remember the last time I deep hooked a steelhead deep. So that's just my experience. That could be different for other people. Maybe you do that, and that's why I don't like running them. But as I said, the advantage to this is now, say I ding that on a rock and it's dull and I'm not confident that it's sticky sharp, so if a steelhead grabs it, he may not get hooked very well. I can just switch this hook out, right? And I'll carry a pack of hooks like this. So this is currently my favorite brand, Owner, and I like the cutting point. There's a couple other ones, but I had one straighten on me this fall on a steelhead, like a first grab. I don't know what it was. It was a doe or a buck. But man, they hit it hard and it pulled so hard and so fast, but I didn't like lock up my line. Like it should have taken some line out of my finger. Anyways, it straightened the hook and I have no idea how, so I retired that pack of, they were different. They were Owner needle point, I think. And don't ask me the difference, but I had that one negative experience and I didn't like it. So I kind of threw those in the bin. I don't use them, but I've had nothing but success with the cutting point ones. Maybe they're not as sharp, but just the way the hook is cut, I don't know. I feel like the hook stays in and they're strong and they don't straighten out or anything like that, even on big fish. Trying to think what else. That's really it. Like, just to recap, if you want to get into two-handed fly fishing, you need a rod. So I'm not going to tell you what length or weight to get. That's entirely up to you, and there's tons of information online about that. But you need a rod. You need a reel. You want, ideally, if you're going for steelhead and big hot steelhead, you probably want something with some high capacity for a lot of backing and a lot of running line. So like a large arbor reel with a good drag, because I'm telling you, if you get a cheap drag, those steelhead are going to smoke your drag, and it's no good. You want something that's really good quality and consistent, so when the fish are taking long runs, it's not jerky and like releasing pressure and tightening pressure, and because cheap reels will do that, right? But you get a good high quality drag system and they will just smoothly pull the line off your reel, which is good for keeping that hook set in the corner of the mouth where you want it. So big reel, you want lots of backing if you can, because steelhead can take some big runs, especially in those big rivers. I don't know that you need like the heaviest backing. I've always just run 30 pounds and zero issues with it ever breaking. I wouldn't go heavier than 30 pounds. I'm sure you could get away with 20 pounds. It's not every day you go into your backing. And I mean, when you do, I mean, they go pretty far into your backing, but they don't spool you. So whatever. I use 30 pound backing. I use a slick shooter 50 pound, the real slick shooter 50 pound running line for my 8-weight setup. I have a 6-weight setup that I skate dry flies with on a river that traditionally has smaller size steelhead, and I run the 35 pound slick shooter, and I think it's totally fine. It's not always about, I think, the breaking strength of it, but I feel like the 50 pound is a bit more substantial in your fingers, right? So when you're stripping in and coiling loops and stuff, it gives you a bit more to work with. When they make like 25 pound slick shooter, it's real thin, right? So it's kind of not as easy to hold on to with your fingers and loops slip through and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know, unless you like nick your slick shooter, it could break and then you lose your shooting head. So you always want to pay attention to your running line, that you're not stepping all over it when you're in the river and causing little nicks and dings, and those are points where they could break, and that sucks. It's expensive to lose. You have to buy a new running line, but you have to buy a new shooting head, a new sink tip, and the fly, and yeah, not cheap, so you don't want to do that. So running line, and then a shooting head, so you want to do a little bit of research into that for what kind of flies you think you're going to be throwing and what length and weight of sink tips you're going to be turning over. So there's all sorts of charts on that, but if you're going to be swinging some of these bigger flies that are going to be really wet and a bit heavier, holding a lot of water when you're pulling them out, I like to go a bit on the high side of the grains. You know what I mean? Like maybe this rod could cast a 550 just fine, or whatever grain weight that particular brand comes in. But I like the 600. You know, maybe a 630 is too heavy for it. You know, I have a 14-foot 9-weight two-handed rod. And I think it casts pretty good with a 630 to a 660 grain shooting head, but 660 is getting a bit heavy, and it is a bit overkill. You can overload a rod, and that's not great either. So you're trying to find a balance, but again, if you're throwing heavy like T14, T20 sink tips and big heavy Chinook flies like that, you might want to overload it and go up a little bit, but that's all personal preference, and that all depends on your rod and what it actually likes. So you have to do a little research and hopefully not too much testing, because you don't want to buy too many shooting heads to find out what you like. But I run a 600 on my 8-weight. What else? Sink tips. You definitely want a variety of sink tips. You can get those just pre-made from the different manufacturers. And again, that's personal preference. I mean, I can't tell you what you should use, but man, if I had to just have 2 sink tips for the rest of my life, it'd be a T8 and a T3, 10-foot section both. And I'm pretty confident, you know, unless I'm skating dry flies, I'm going to fish everything and I'll be totally fine. Because you've got to remember too, like say the water's getting really shallow or the current's slowing down, you don't always have to run a big heavy, you know, head on the end of your fly, right? You can run no dumbbell eyes or bead on the front of your fly, and that just allows you to customize your swing and your depth and all that. You know, you can speed your swing up in slow water to keep it off the bottom. There's a lot of techniques and tricks you can do, and I mean those are kind of beyond this video, but just to get you started. And then yeah, get yourself a spool of leader material. I'll leave that up to you. It's whatever your favorite brand is, whatever you have confidence in. I got all the confidence in the world in the Maxima Ultra Green. I mean, I know it's not invisible, it's not fluorocarbon, but I don't really care. I used fluorocarbon for a couple seasons, and honestly, that stuff broke on me, and I didn't like that. So I went back to the Ultra Green. Doesn't break, doesn't seem to spook fish, and I can always count on it. So yeah, that's really it. Just a very basic, if you're interested in getting into two-handed fly rods, it can be a lot when you're surfing the internet, trying to get information, especially if you're getting into like maybe a bit of a boutique sort of section of two-handed fly rod casting. It doesn't have to be that complicated. If you just want to get into steelheading, you know, this is a kind of setup that'll do you well. And when it comes to price of fly rods and gear, you do get what you pay for. There are some good reliable brands that are fair prices and have lifetime warranties, and they cast really well. But if you go too cheap, they'll break, they won't cast very well. You can go super expensive, you can spend as much money as you want on some of these rods, but keep in mind, if you break it, it's gonna hurt that much more. So it's a tool to catch steelhead. So I would advise you when you first get into it, maybe don't break the bank, but don't buy something too cheap because you'll regret it. Cheap reel's not gonna serve you well, cheap rod's not gonna cast very well. So you may as well buy something because you're gonna keep it. And then it's like anything else, you build up your quiver, right? So if you fall in love with steelheading and you got your 8-weight, maybe when you start going after Chinooks and, you know, big strong chrome ones, you go up to a 9 or a 10-weight or more. Say you don't live in an area where you steelhead all the time, you live in Alberta and there's lots of trout fishing, maybe you go down to a 4 or 5-weight spey rod, because you could fish for trout in the same way that you fish for steelhead. You're just swinging flies through runs on different rivers, but you're just trying to match your equipment to the size of the fish that you're trying to catch, right? So yeah, I mean, if you fall in love with it, you're probably going to end up like having a variety of two-handed fly rods. You know, probably like you have a variety of single-hand rods. You know, one, it's a tool for a job, and you have a quiver, and you pull the right tool for a job when you want to use it. So, anyways, hope you enjoyed it. Haven't done many fishing videos lately, but like I said, my buddy is really interested in getting into two-handed fly rods for steelheading this fall. So I figured this good opportunity to maybe explain some basics and fundamentals. So yeah, if you have any questions, drop them in the comments, happy to answer them. And if there's any interest in more of these types of videos, I'll keep talking about them. I mean, I've been fishing for a long time, so I got a lot to say if anyone cares to hear about it. So anyways, take care and have a good day, and we'll see you next time.